Dr. Shires, what is DEI?
Diversity, equity, and inclusion, as my colleague, Mr. Gonzalez said earlier, is none of those three things. It is an ideology that's based on a philosophy. It comes out of the academic world. It's based on a philosophy that society is driven by we are driven by our environment and our identity, and the world that we live in is constructed from it. As a result of that, we are victims of the world around us, essentially. And in that world, they divide people into oppressors and the oppressed in the Marxist tradition to leverage power.
Are DEI policies compatible with meritocracy?
They are not.
Could you elaborate?
Meritocracy is based on the idea that you measure somebody based on what they're doing, not what they look like. DEI policies actually call for equal outcomes for everyone. And so if I perform at a different level than someone else, they are automatically placed in that same level.
What do DEI policies mean in practice?
In practice, it means quotas. It means that
Racial quotas.
It does, and just like the congressman mentioned, you know, the perception that people are promoted to ranks without the adequate backgrounds, whether that's legitimate or not. In this case, I don't think it is, but that is the perception that arises because you simply assign people status based on who they are and not what they've done.
Ms. Stepman, racial quotas seem un-American to me, don't they, to you?
Yes, and they're illegal.
And they're illegal. Under DEI regimes, what races do colleges and universities typically least prefer in their admissions processes?
Whites, men, Asians. Men is not a race, obviously, but there actually might be a little bit of reverse discrimination actually going against women now because women so predominate on universities. But yes, whites and Asians primarily.
Why do you think that it's primarily those groups?
Because they're in a war with the reality of these disparities. So if you want to have a quota that comes out perfectly racially balanced at the end, the only way that these universities have been able to achieve that is by discriminating on the basis of race and sex in their admissions.
And you mentioned that a lot of colleges and universities, you expect to fight DEI restrictions. Why is that? You said that there was an ideological component there.
Right. I think my fellow witness correctly referenced the idea of the oppressor and the oppressed. There's this idea that all differences in culture, disparities, outcomes, all of these are somehow immediately evidence of discrimination and some kind of unjust system. And so if there's an ideological commitment to make sure that they kind of force the world to look the way that they think it ought to. And unfortunately, that's both immoral, discriminatory, and fortunately for us, it's illegal under the law of the United States.
Could you walk us through, practically speaking, what a DEI policy would mean for a college admissions process?
It means that in practice, they place a thumb on the scale for applications that may have no more or, in fact, lesser qualifications than other applications purely on the basis of race. And by the way, we saw this in the data in Students for Fair Admissions. Harvard was absolutely discriminating against Asian and white applicants who are comparably situated to other applicants. And we know that universities have been doing this for decades.
Mr. Gonzalez, BlackRock has a scholarship exclusively for diverse students. That's their words. What do you think diverse means in that context?
Yeah, that is actually diversity should mean that you have people of diverse backgrounds. Often enough, diverse means members of any of the so-called marginalized groups alone, without any participation by Asian Americans or white Americans.
That seems discriminatory, does it not?
And as Ms. Felcher said, it's not just discriminatory, it's also illegal and immoral.
Mm-hmm. We see this across the corporate world. Starbucks has a training program for employees limited to, quote, Black, Indigenous, and peoples of color BIPOC partners. Do you think that's discriminatory?
And illegal. I think the corporate world, I agree with Ms. Felcher. I think the corporate world is, in fact, trying to move away. I've heard many anecdotes of
Their goal at the time was for BIPOC representation to be at least 30% at all corporate levels and at least 40% at all retail and manufacturing roles by 2025. That sounds like a racial quota, doesn't it?
That's a quota, that's illegal, that's immoral. However, since President Trump was elected, they're actually coming forward and saying, hey, we're so glad you're making this illegal, you're discouraging us from doing this. We didn't want to do it in the first place. And so I agree with Ms. Felcher that the corporate world is moving at a much faster rate than the academy.